Galaxy's Edge opened at Disneyland and the Walt Disney World Resort back in 2019, and honestly, it opened to pretty positive reviews. However, as time went on, a lot of people sort of thought that Galaxy's Edge was just a bit lackluster, and honestly, I can't really help but agree. I visited Galaxy's Edge one time back in 2021, and honestly, from my pretty decent experience there, it didn't have that much to offer in my opinion, and I really can't help but think that the main reason being that is because of the setting and the time that they chose for this specific land. Now, Star Wars is, Star Wars. It's like one of the most popular franchises of all time. It's everywhere. You walk into any kind of store or anything like that, and you'll find like loads and loads of Star Wars merchandise, just anything like that on TV. It's always playing. Star Wars is one of the biggest franchises of all time. So of course they're going to make a huge land out of it. It's going to be super detailed, super immersive, and for the most part it is actually all those things. It is very immersive, it is very detailed, and it does put you into this different world. However, whenever I say time, I mean the setting, like the specific setting of the Star Wars universe that they put you in. Now, instead of using an already pre-existing planet in the Star Wars universe, Disney decided to do something a little bit different, and honestly, I kind of respect them for it. They decided to make an entirely new land, or a new Star Wars planet, and that's basically what you're on. It's a brand new experience, so it's not in any of the films, but it's your own little planet, which honestly kind of just makes it a lot more sense for putting it in a theme park, just because, a lot of these planets, even though we see a lot of them in the films, we don't exactly know like the full feeling of them, and plus there's so many different planets to choose from, what planet are they going to choose from? There's so many fan favorites. So, of course it makes the most sense for them to just create one that kind of brings Star Wars all together. However, the specific planet and setting of this land isn't really my main issue. However, it's the movies that they decided to theme it off of, which is the episodes 7, 8, and 9. Which, if you don't know, are the most recent ones, obviously, and, not the best. Episode 7, The Force Awakens, was pretty good, but then the final two were just, everybody knows, they kind of just sucked, like, in general. Like, there is no saving those films, they're just the worst of the franchise, so I really don't understand entirely too much why they decided to make this entire land based off the worst trilogy of the entire franchise of Star Wars, whenever they have 6 other films that are fantastic. So, if you haven't already figured it out, in today's video we'll be discussing on how they can improve Galaxy's Edge and what would have been a little bit different about it if they would have went with the other 6 films. So we're going to start with what many consider to be the best films of Star Wars franchise, being episodes 4, 5, and 6, aka just the original trilogy in general. Now, what else is there to be said about this? This trilogy has so many iconic characters and settings, and it kind of baffles me, and I'm sure it baffles a lot of other people, on why they didn't go with these characters in general. Like, there's just so many iconic things about this trilogy. These were the films that kind of just started it all, There would be no Galaxy's Edge without these films in general, and, like I said, what is there to be said about these films? They're just fantastic. Everyone always references these films, these characters, these storylines. It's what started Star Wars. We wouldn't have anything as far as Star Wars goes in the theme parks or even on Disney Plus or something if it weren't for this original trilogy. And not only is it the most iconic, but just in my opinion, at least, I'm sure a lot of other people think this too, it just has the more memorable things about it. You have like the AT-ATs and everything. Like, how cool would that be to actually see those around the park? I know we have them in Rise of the Resistance, but that's for like a little small section. And then even some of the characters like Boba Fett and stuff, I know there's been word that he might come to Galaxy's Edge, but it would make a lot more sense if the whole land in general was taking place in that specific time frame and not, kind of in a random time frame. Because now that we have this setting with characters such as like Kylo Ren in the First Order and Rey and all those people, it doesn't make much sense for a character like Boba Fett to just kind of walk around out of nowhere. Even like the Mandalorian that they're adding to the theme parks, even though it's super cool to see him in there, it just doesn't make much sense at all, and it kind of just breaks the immersion in general. And the only reason they're adding these characters is just because they're popular, just because of Disney Plus. And other iconic characters that are a bit obscure nowadays, such as Jabba the Hutt. Just imagine going into a restaurant and seeing like an animatronic of him or something. That would be so cool, and just in general bring a lot of old and new fans into like this very, very cool setting that, it's just, like I said, it's a bit obscure nowadays. And in general, having a bit more unique walk-around characters such as Greedo, a bit more alien life forms in Galaxy's Edge. After all, it is a sci-fi franchise. We need to see a bit more aliens and less droids and stormtroopers, because even though it's cool to see those characters, you can tell they're just people in costumes. We want to see like the more exotic characters in Star Wars. And as far as the rides go, they can do so much better in my opinion. Sure, Rise of the Resistance is one of like the most advanced rides of all time, and the detailing is incredible, the immersiveness is insane, but I would have much rather it be based off, 4, 5, and 6 versus 7, 8, and 9. Just overall, I feel like it just would have been such a cooler ride, and just imagine like this specific scene right here, Luke versus Darth Vader, like just seeing that in the detail style of Rise of the Resistance, that would have been just so insane and incredible. And I get Rise of the Resistance isn't really supposed to be like a recreation of the stories. It's supposed to be like the guest's own stories. But even then, you could still have your own story as the guest with these characters that just in general are a lot more popular. There's, I mean, no offense to any of you original fans of Star Wars, but these characters are a lot older now than the newer characters, but yet they're still so much more popular than the newer characters. That's you can't even deny that fact. You go into like Target or Walmart or something, you're gonna see a lot more merchandise for characters such as like Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker than you are Kylo Ren and Rey. And really, I think the only reason they went with the 7, 8, and 9 trilogy to begin with is just because it's the more newer, modern trilogy. More younger fans are more familiar with it, I guess. They kind of grew up with this. But I feel like more of the people that go here are going to want to see more of the other 6 movies versus the newer ones that, like I said, just kind of suck in general. But even like younger audiences, they can still, have a really good time with the older characters because honestly, even as a younger fan, if you are a younger fan of Star Wars, you still know who these characters are. Who doesn't know who these characters are? Another reason is because this trilogy was, specifically made by Disney. The other 6 films, even though they're owned by Disney, they're not exactly fully made by them, but 7, 8, and 9 are completely made by Disney, which might explain why it's so bad, but, regardless, it just kind of, leaks into the parks a little bit, and overall, it's just kind of disappointing. And yeah, sure, whenever Galaxy's Edge first opened up, a lot of people were excited about it. It's a cool experience overall, and it still feels like Star Wars, but it is kind of lackluster, and I feel like that just kind of goes with the creativity in general. I just feel like the other 6 films had a lot more creativity to them, and even not just 4, 5, and 6, but we're about to talk about episodes 1, 2, and 3 here, I guess what you can say the original of the storyline. Even those 3 films, in my opinion, had a lot more creativity than the 7, 8, and 9. Even though these films might not have the really popular characters such as Darth Vader and Boba Fett, the episodes of 1, 2, and 3 still have a really good amount of iconic characters and Sith Lords, and just, again, a lot of iconic scenes I just find to be so much better than episodes 7, 8, and 9. Like the scene with Darth Maul here, just it's such a good scene, and like just the battle is amazing. And even though they don't have to like exactly recreate the battle in the Disney parks, just even having like a walk around character like these characters would just be so cool just to see these versus, the stereotypical, like I said, droids and stormtroopers. I mean, just imagine walking around and seeing a character like Darth Maul. That would be such an intimidating experience for, honestly, a lot of people because this is a very, very cool and just scary character overall for Star Wars, and he's just so iconic, Star Wars doesn't have to be all about, like Darth Vader and stuff like that. You can throw in some other characters here and there, and it would still be great. And as far as a ride goes for this trilogy, I mean, come on, we've all wanted it. A pod racer style attraction, whether it be a simulator or a roller coaster, just anything to make you feel like you're racing in a pod. A racer would be so, so cool. I'm sure we've all said it at least one point in time. Just, this is honestly one of the most iconic scenes from episodes 1, 2, and 3. And I just, it's really weird that they made it entirely based off Star Wars and they didn't put this in there. I get it would be hard, but I mean, if they've done really, really cool stuff like Rise of the Resistance before, I'm sure they can figure out this too. And honestly, the rides are still pretty good at Galaxy's Edge, I'm not going to lie. I just wish that they were based off of, different films. My main complaint, though, is just in general the characters that walk around Galaxy's Edge. Disney promised that we'd be seeing a good bit of characters, and honestly, we just see nothing but Stormtroopers and Kylo Ren, and just masked characters overall. And yeah, I get it, those are pretty iconic characters, I guess, in the Star Wars franchise, but it would be nice if they changed it up a bit and, maybe give us something a little different. I do understand that back then they used to have characters like Darth Vader and stuff like that walking around the parks along with that style of stormtroopers. But again, just give us, more Jedis in general. I feel like we don't see enough Jedis for sure, and, those are a very big part of Star Wars, and I just feel like we should definitely see these more in the parks. And even some other Sith Lords, ones that typically don't wear a mask. 'Cause I mentioned Darth Maul earlier in this video, and even characters like Count Dooku would be pretty nice to see. They don't have to be the most accurate representation. I get that's kind of hard to do, but as long as they kind of just reference these characters in there, I feel like that would just make the experience so much better in general for many, many fans. And I cannot explain enough how much I would love to see a General Grievous walk-around character or an animatronic of some kind. He is such an intimidating character, and he's so big and tall and just scary looking. He would be such a cool character to see come to life. And like I said, either animatronic form or just a giant walk-around character would also be really, really cool as well, and honestly very doable in my opinion. But alas, we are still stuck with the most recent characters, and even though they do represent them well, and I just, they're still not the worst characters in general, I just want to see something a bit more from Galaxy's Edge. At this point, honestly, I don't really care about the consistency of the timeline at this point. I just want to see them reference and show these older trilogies. And yeah, whatever. You can have your own argument in the comments below if you want. I will meet you down there to talk with you about that if you have your own opinions about this. But this is just how I feel about it, and I'm sure a lot of other people would like to see more homages and just, again, just referencing the older trilogies as well. And I mean, really, Disney kind of needs some kind of success with the Disney parks and Star Wars after Galactic Star Cruiser being the biggest flop possibly in Disney history. You know, there needs to be something positive for Star Wars fans in the Disney parks, and I definitely think this might be the way to go. Anyways, guys, that'll do it for this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell me down in the comments below, what do you think of them possibly adding some different trilogies to the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or like just that idea in general. Again, tell me down your opinions in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.